Welcome to Cherry Blossom BL Story, where emotions bloom and stories unfold. Sit back, relax, and enjoy today's chapter.
In a world where love is just another transaction, one ruthless billionaire thought he could buy, break, and discard anyone who crossed his path, until a fragile stranger from another reality crashed into his life literally. No money, no power, no demands. Just unbreakable kindness and a heart that refused to shatter. Kai Valen built an empire on cruelty, but when he finally looked into the eyes of the man he almost destroyed, he realized the only thing he couldn't control was falling in love. This is not a fairy tale. This is redemption carved in blood, tears, and second chances. Crimson chains, broken wings, hold on tight. Chapter 1. Shattered arrival rain hammered the cracked asphalt like fists. Ilara's sneakers, already worn through at the toes, slapped against puddles as he balanced the insulated delivery bag against his hip. The last order of the night, spicy noodles to an apartment 6 blocks away. His phone's battery was at 4%, the screen flickering warnings he couldn't afford to heed. Another $12, enough for tomorrow's rent installment and maybe a cheap loaf of bread. He didn't see the car. Headlights flared too late, tires screamed. Metal met flesh with a sickening crunch that wasn't loud enough to echo, just wet and final. Darkness rushed in like cold water, then nothing, until it wasn't nothing. Ilara's eyelids fluttered, cold, so cold it burned. His cheek was pressed to something hard and gritty, concrete, not the familiar linoleum of his tiny apartment hallway. Rain still fell, but slower now, as though the sky had tired of punishing him. His delivery uniform hung in rags. One sleeve was gone entirely, the other soaked crimson. Pain throbbed everywhere: ribs, left leg, the back of his skull. But it was distant, muffled, like someone else's body. He tried to sit up. The world tilted violently. No pheromones, no scent markers in the air. No low, grade hum of alphas and betas and omegas brushing past one another like static electricity. Just diesel fumes, wet garbage, and the metallic bite of his own blood. Ilara's breath hitched. He clawed at his neck. His scent gland was still there, slightly swollen from the crash, but it felt wrong, muted, like shouting into cotton. Aware, he staggered to his feet, barefoot now, one sneaker gone, the other split open like a burst fruit. The street signs were in the same alphabet, but the names were unfamiliar. Cars looked sleeker, sharper, headlights brighter and colder. Billboards advertised things he didn't recognize, new phone models with impossible thinness, investment apps promising wealth in seconds, cologne that smelled like money instead of dominance. This wasn't home. This wasn't anywhere. Panic clawed up his throat. He ran. Bare feet slapped pavement. Horns blared. Someone shouted. Ilara didn't stop. He couldn't. If he stopped, the terror would catch him and swallow him whole. He burst into an intersection against the light. Brakes shrieked. High-end, expensive brakes. A black Rolls-Royce Phantom loomed like a shark, chrome grille gleaming under sodium streetlights. It stopped inches from his knees. Ilara froze, chest heaving, rain dripping from matted black hair into wide, terrified hazel eyes. The driver's door opened. A man stepped out, tall. Impeccably tailored charcoal suit despite the downpour. Black hair slicked back, not a strand disturbed. Face carved from winter marble, sharp jaw, thinner lips pressed into a line of distaste. Eyes so dark they swallowed light. Kai Valen. He didn't speak at first. Just looked down at the filthy, trembling boy in front of his car like one might regard roadkill that had inconveniently chosen to bleed on Italian leather. Ilara's knees buckled. He dropped to them without thinking, habit from too many years of deference in his old world. Please, his voice cracked, raw from screaming he didn't remember. I don't know where I am. My address 14, B Lotus Lane, East District. It's not here. Nothing is here. Please, sir, I just need to go home. Kai's gaze flicked over him. Torn uniform, blood, streaked face, bare feet turning blue in the rain, the faint tremble that had nothing to do with cold. His lip curled. Creative, he said, voice low, cultured, edged with frost. Most of you just fake a limp and cry about medical bills. You went full theatrical. I almost applaud. Ilara blinked through tears and rain. I'm not. I swear I'm not lying. Kai moved faster than Ilara expected. The backhand cracked across his cheek like a whip. Ilara's head snapped sideways. Blood sprayed from a split lip and dotted the gleaming hood of the rolls. Stars burst behind his eyes. You think tears buy sympathy? Kai's voice never rose. It didn't need to. You think blood on my car makes me generous? Ilara tasted copper. His ears rang. Still, he lifted shaking hands, not to fight, never to fight, just open, palmed, pleading. I don't want money, he whispered. I just want to understand, please. For one heartbeat, something flickered in Kai's eyes, not pity, not mercy. Curiosity, maybe, the same cold interest a vivisectionist might show a still-twitching specimen. Then it vanished. He turned his head slightly. Trunk. Two men in black suits materialized from the shadows behind the car. Security, silent, efficient. One grabbed Ilara's arms, the other seized his ankles. He was too weak, too stunned, too broken to struggle properly. They folded him like laundry and dropped him into the trunk. The lid slammed. Darkness again. But this time it smelled of leather, gasoline, and the faint, expensive ghost of Kai's cologne. The engine purred to life. Ilara curled into himself, knees to chest, blood trickling from his mouth onto the carpeted floor. He didn't cry out. He only whispered, so quiet even he barely heard it, I want to go home. The car pulled away, smooth and merciless, carrying him deeper into a world that had already decided he didn't belong, and into the hands of a man who had never once believed in belonging, only in owning. Pains and mercy denied, Ilara came back to consciousness in fragments. First, the sting of antiseptic in his nostrils. Second, cold metal biting into both wrists and one ankle. Third, the slow, heavy thud of his own heartbeat echoing in his ears like someone knocking on a locked door. He opened his eyes, white ceiling, too clean, fluorescent lights that buzzed faintly, the kind that made everything look slightly sick. No windows, no natural light. Just the sterile glow of a private hospital room, stripped of anything comforting, no flowers, no get-well cards, no beeping monitors anymore. Only the Roman force stand beside him, the line already disconnected, and the handcuffs chaining his right wrist to the bed rail, left wrist to the opposite rail, one ankle tethered to the footboard. He tugged once, weakly, metal clinked. Panic rose sharp and immediate, but his body was too heavy to run. Bruises throbbed across his ribs, his cheek burned where the backhand had landed, and his lip was swollen and crusted with dried blood. Footsteps, the door opened without a knock. Kai Valen entered alone. Still in the same charcoal suit from the night before, or perhaps a fresh one, Ilara couldn't tell. No tie now, top button undone, sleeves rolled to mid-forearm, revealing corded muscle and a thin silver watch that probably cost more than Ilara's entire life. He didn't speak at first. Just stood at the foot of the bed, arms crossed, regarding Ilara the way one might study a malfunctioning appliance. Ilara swallowed. His throat felt lined with sandpaper. I'm awake, he rasped, obvious, stupid, but silence felt worse. Kai's gaze flicked to the cuffs, then back to Ilara's face. You're alive, he corrected flatly. That's the extent of your achievement so far. Ilara's eyes filled without permission. Tears slipped sideways into his hair. He hated how easily they came, always had, but right now they felt like the only language he had left. Please, he whispered, I don't know how I got here. I don't know why nothing makes sense. I need somewhere to stay, just for a little while. I'll work, anything. I'll clean floors, wash dishes, scrub toilets, whatever you want. I won't eat much. I won't be any trouble. Please don't send me to the police. They'll think I'm crazy. I'll be useful. I promise. The words tumbled out in a broken rush, each one smaller than the last. Kai tilted his head slightly, as though listening to a mildly interesting sales pitch. Then he moved fast, one hand shot out, fingers closing around Ilara's jaw, forcing his head back against the pillow. Not hard enough to bruise further, just enough to remind him who held the power. You think tears are currency here? Kai's voice was low, almost conversational. That if you cry prettily enough, I'll feel sorry for you. Ilara tried to shake his head, couldn't, in no eye. I'm not. Kai's free hand drew back. The punch landed in Ilara's stomach hard, precise, driving every scrap of air from his lungs. Ilara folded inward as much as the cuffs allowed, gasping, choking on nothing. Tears spilled faster now, hot and helpless. Kai released his jaw. You're going to stay, he said calmly, because I decide when you leave, and you're going to prove exactly what I already know, that everyone has a price. Yours will surface eventually. They always do. He straightened, brushing imaginary lint from his sleeve, but first, rules. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small key, unlocked the cuffs one by one. Ilara's limbs fell limp. He didn't dare move. Kai stepped back. Get up. Ilara obeyed slowly, every movement agony. His bare feet touched cold tile. He swayed. Kai didn't offer a hand. Instead, he turned and walked out. Ilara followed on trembling legs, clutching the torn remnants of his delivery uniform around himself like armor that didn't exist, down a short hallway, through a reinforced door, into a narrow service corridor, then another door, this one plain steel, no window. Kai opened it. Inside, a room the size of a large closet, concrete floor, single thin mattress on the ground, no sheets, no pillow, a bare bulb overhead, a small sink in the corner, a toilet with no lid, no mirror, no window, no clock. Kai gestured inside like a tour guide showing off a mildly disappointing exhibit. Your accommodations, he said, until you give me a reason to upgrade them, or until I grow bored and dispose of you. Ilara stared, then because he had nothing else, he stepped inside. Kai followed, closing the door behind them. The click of the lock sounded final. Rules, Kai repeated. Listen carefully. Disobedience will be corrected immediately and painfully. He held up one finger. One, eyes on the floor unless I tell you otherwise. 2 fingers, 2. Speak only when spoken to, and only to answer. No questions, no begging, no stories. 3 fingers, 3. You exist to serve. You clean what I tell you to clean. You cook what I tell you to cook. You kneel when I enter a room. You stand when I tell you to stand. Mistakes are punished. Lies are punished worse. He stepped closer. Ilara instinctively dropped his gaze to the concrete. Good, Kai murmured. You learn fast. He reached out almost gently and tipped Ilara's chin up with 2 fingers. Their eyes met. Ilara's were wet, wide, pleading in spite of the rule. Kai's were flat, empty, assessing. You're going to break, he said softly. Everyone does, and when you do, when you finally ask for money, or threaten to go to the press, or try to steal something, you'll wish you'd done it sooner. Ilara's lips trembled. I won't, he whispered. I swear. Kai studied him another long second. Then he smiled small, cold, without warmth. We'll see. Without warning, his fist connected with Ilara's cheek, the same side he'd backhanded in the street. Ilara staggered sideways, crashing into the wall. Fresh blood bloomed on his lip. That, Kai said evenly, was for speaking without permission. He turned toward the door. Ilara slid down the wall, knees buckling, arms wrapped around himself. Kai paused with his hand on the knob. One more thing, he said without looking back. Don't try to run. The building is locked down. The elevators require my print. And if you somehow make it to the streets, he glanced over his shoulder. I own half the security contracts in this city. You won't make it far. The door opened, closed, locked, silence. Ilara stayed on the floor for a long time, cheek throbbing, stomach aching, tears dripping steadily onto concrete. He didn't cry out. He didn't pound on the door. He only pressed his forehead to his knees and whispered, so quiet the walls swallowed it, I'll be good. Because in his old world, goodness had sometimes bought mercy. Here, he didn't know what it brought, but he had nothing else to offer. Chapter 3. The first heat, the room had no clock, no window to mark the passing of day into night. Ilara measured time in the ache of his bruises and the slow drip of the sink faucet he couldn't reach without crawling. He had been given tasks on the second day: a bucket of soapy water and a rag, clean the penthouse corridors until they gleamed. He did it on hands and knees because standing for long made his ribs scream. When he finished, Kai inspected the floor with a single glance, said nothing, and walked away. That silence felt like approval, or perhaps indifference. Ilara chose to believe the former. On what he guessed was the fourth day, something changed. It began as a low simmer in his belly, familiar and terrifying. Heat, not the fever from the crash, not infection. This was deeper, older, written into his bones from a world that no longer existed. His skin flushed hot, sweat beaded along his hairline, then poured. His scent gland still present, still tender, swelled painfully, leaking the faintest trace of something sweet and desperate that only he could smell. Slick gathered between his thighs, soaking through the thin sweatpants Kai had thrown at him like an afterthought. Ilara curled tighter on the mattress, arms wrapped around his middle, breathing shallow. No suppressants here, no nest materials, no alpha to ease it, only to claim. He bit his lip until it bled again, trying to stay quiet. The last thing he wanted was to draw attention. Attention meant pain. But the heat didn't care about silence. It built and built. By the time the door opened, Ilara was shaking, teeth chattering despite the fire under his skin. Slick had soaked the mattress beneath him. The air in the small room was thick with his own helpless scent. Kai stood in the doorway. He didn't step inside at first, just watched. Ilara's eyes, glassy, unfocused, lifted instinctively before dropping again to the floor. I'm sorry, he whispered, voice cracked and small. It's happening. I can't stop it. Please don't be angry. Kai's expression remained unreadable. He stepped in, closed the door, locked it. Then he simply stood there for hours. Ilara writhed. He tried to stay still, tried to breathe through it, but the waves came harder. Cramps twisting low in his abdomen, thighs trembling, knees so sharp it felt like knives. Tears leaked steadily. He wiped them with shaking hands, smearing sweat and salt across his cheeks. Kai never moved. He watched the way a scientist might watch an experiment, detached, clinical, waiting for the variable to reveal itself. When Ilara finally sobbed a loud, broken, animal sound, Kai spoke, pathetic, one word. Then he crossed the room in 3 strides, grabbed Ilara by the upper arm, dragged him up. Ilara's legs wouldn't hold him. He stumbled, bare feet slipping on concrete. Kai didn't slow. He hauled Ilara through the corridor, past the main living areas, marble, glass, cold luxury, and into the master bedroom. The door shut with a soft click that sounded like a guillotine. Kai threw Ilara face down onto the enormous bed. Silk sheets were cool against fever, hot skin. Ilara tried to push up on his elbows. Please wait, Kai's knee pressed between his shoulder blades, pinning him flat. Quiet. He didn't undress Ilara, just yanked the soaked sweatpants down to his knees in one rough motion. The fabric caught on bruised thighs. Ilara whimpered. Kai's belt buckle clinked, then his weight settled, knees bracketing Ilara's hips, one hand fisting in his hair, yanking his head back until his throat arched painfully. You think this is new? Kai's voice was low, almost bored. That crying and leaking will make me believe you're innocent. Everyone performs when they want something. Ilara choked on a sob. I don't want anything. I swear. Kai entered him in one brutal thrust. No preparation beyond the slick. His body had no choice but to produce. Ilara screamed, muffled into the sheets. Kai didn't pause. He set a punishing rhythm, hips snapping forward with mechanical precision. Each thrust drove deeper, forcing Ilara's body to yield whether it wanted to or not. Pain and unwanted pleasure twisted together until Ilara couldn't tell them apart. Kai's free hand roamed brutal, possessive, fingers dug into hips hard enough to leave prints. Teeth sank into the curve of Ilara's shoulder, breaking skin. Blood welled, copper taste filled the air. Ilara sobbed through every movement. "I'm sorry," he gasped between thrusts. "I'm sorry. Please, sorry." He didn't know what he was apologizing for existing, for the heat, for not being what Kai expected. Kai's pace grew erratic. His grip tightened until Ilara's wrists, still faintly bruised from the cuffs, ached anew. When release came, it was with a low, guttural sound that might have been anger or satisfaction or both. He stayed buried inside for a long moment, breathing steady while Ilara shook beneath him. Then he pulled out. Ilara whimpered at the sudden emptiness. Kai stood, adjusted his clothing with efficient movements, looked down at the boy on his bed, face streaked with tears, shoulder bleeding, thighs bruised and smeared, body trembling in aftershocks. No softness, no aftercare. "Just cold assessment. You didn't ask for money," Kai said quietly, almost to himself, not even once. Ilara turned his face into the sheets, fresh tears-soaked silk. Kai walked to the door, paused. "You'll clean this up tomorrow," he said. "The sheets, the floor, yourself." Then he left. The door locked from the outside. Ilara stayed where he was for what felt like hours, curled on his side, knees drawn up, blood and slick and tears mingling on the expensive bedding. His body ached in new ways. His heart ached in old ones. But even then, even broken, even bleeding, he pressed his lips together and whispered into the empty room, "Thank you for not throwing me out." The words tasted like salt and iron. He didn't know if anyone heard them. He didn't know if it mattered, but it was all he had left. Chapter 4. Blood on Marble. The days blurred into a rhythm of pain and repetition. Ilara woke each morning, though morning was only a guess. Since the servant room had no light beyond the bare bulb, he was allowed to switch on for exactly 2 hours. Curled on the thin mattress, body cataloguing new hurts like an unwelcome inventory. Ribs still tender from the trunk ride. Cheekbone faintly swollen. Shoulder scabbed where teeth had torn skin. The pseudo heat had left him raw inside, walking with a careful stiffness he tried to hide. He was given clothes on the 5th day, plain grey sweatpants and a white t-shirt, both too large, both smelling faintly of industrial detergent. No underwear, no shoes, bare feet on cold floors became the norm. Kai's instructions arrived via intercom each day short, clipped commands broadcast into the small room like orders from a warden. "Kitchen, now." Ilara obeyed instantly. The penthouse kitchen was vast, black marble counters, stainless steel everything, appliances that looked like they belonged in a laboratory rather than a home. Ilara had never cooked for anyone but himself before. Cheap ramen, instant noodles, the occasional egg when he could afford it. Now he was expected to prepare meals for a man who ate like food was merely fuel. First task, coffee. He measured grounds with trembling fingers, poured water, waited for the machine to hiss and gurgle. When the mug was ready, black, no sugar, exactly 180 degrees because Kai had once snapped that anything cooler was undrinkable. Ilara carried it on a small tray to the study. He knocked once, entered with eyes down. Kai sat behind a massive desk, screens glowing around him like cold stars. He didn't look up, he set it there. Ilara placed the tray on the corner of the desk. His hand shook, just a fraction. A drop of coffee sloshed over the rim and landed on the marble. Kai's gaze snapped to the dark bead. Silence stretched, sharp as glass. Then Kai stood. Ilara flinched before the first blow landed. The back of Kai's hand cracked across his cheek. Same side as before, reopening the split lip. Ilara staggered sideways, tray clattering to the floor, mug shattered, coffee spread in a steaming black pool. Kai grabbed him by the front of the t-shirt, yanked him close. "You can't even carry a cup without making a mess." A voice low, "Dangerous, clean it with your hands, no rag." Ilara dropped to his knees without a word. Scooped the shards first, fingers slicing on porcelain, then pressed palms into the hot liquid, wiping it across the marble until his skin burned and reddened. Blood from his cut fingers mixed with coffee, leaving faint pink streaks. Kai watched from above. When the floor was clean, streaked but no longer pooling, Kai stepped forward, his polished shoe pressed down on Ilara's hand, grinding broken porcelain into the cuts. Ilara bit back a cry. Tears welled anyway. Kai leaned down. Next time, he said softly, I break something else. He released the foot, walked away. Ilara stayed on the floor until the coffee cooled and his breathing steadied. Then he gathered the shards, wrapped them in the hem of his shirt, and limped back to the servant room to dispose of them in the small trash bin. He didn't cry aloud. He never did where Kai could hear. Lunch was worse. Kai wanted grilled salmon perfectly seared, no overcooking. Ilara had never cooked fish before. The stove was gas. The flame leaped too high. He burned the first fillet. Smoke alarm shrieked. Kai appeared in the doorway like a storm cloud. He didn't shout. He simply walked over, grabbed Ilara's wrist and forced his hand onto the still, hot pan. Skin sizzled. Ilara gasped sharp, involuntary. Kai held him there for 3 full seconds, then released. Try again, he said, and don't burn my food. Ilara cooked the second piece with blistered fingers, tears dripping into the sink where he rinsed the raw salmon. He plated it perfectly garnish of lemon, side of steamed vegetables, and carried it to the dining table on shaking arms. Kai ate without comment. Ilara stood in the corner, eyes down, waiting to be dismissed. When the plate was clean, Kai pushed it away. Clear it. Ilara stepped forward. His burned hand brushed the edge of the plate. It slipped. The porcelain hit marble and exploded. Kai was on him in an instant. Fist to the stomach, same place as the first punch. Ilara doubled over, air gone. Then a knee to the ribs. He crumpled. Kai crouched beside him, voice calm. You're clumsy, he said, or careless. Either way, it costs me time and money. He grabbed Ilara by the hair, dragged him upright, and shoved him toward the broken pieces. Clean, kneel on it if you have to. Ilara knelt, glass bit into knees through thin fabric. He swept with bleeding hands until the floor was clear. Kai left without another word. That night, Ilara crawled back to his room. He didn't bother with the sink, couldn't reach it anyway. He curled on the mattress, knees drawn up, palms pressed to his stomach where the bruise was already blooming purple. He didn't eat the scraps Kai sometimes left on the counter. He never took anything that wasn't given, never asked, never stole. The next morning, Kai watched him more closely. Ilara prepared breakfast, oatmeal, plain, no sugar, without incident, carried the bowl to the study, set it down perfectly. Kai ate. Then he leaned back in his chair. You haven't asked for anything, he said, not a question, an observation. Ilara kept his gaze on the floor. No, sir. Kai's fingers drummed once on the desk. Why? Ilara's voice was small. Because you already gave me a place to stay. That's enough. Kai stared at him for a long moment. Something flickered in his eyes, not warmth, not pity, irritation, as though Ilara's answer was a puzzle piece that didn't fit the picture he'd already drawn. Get out, he said finally. Ilara obeyed. Behind him, Kai remained at the desk, staring at the untouched coffee that had gone cold. For the first time, the silence in the penthouse felt different, not empty, unsettled. Ilara returned to his room, knees still smarting from yesterday's glass, hands wrapped in strips torn from the hem of his shirt. He sat against the wall and whispered to no one, I'll keep being good. Because goodness was the only currency he knew, and even if it bought him nothing here, it was all he had to give.
That's all for today on Cherry Blossom BL Story. Thank you for watching. What do you think about this chapter? Did you like it, or do you think something unexpected is coming? Comment your thoughts below, and subscribe for more stories.